Business meeting of Waynesboro City Council. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. For those in attendance this evening, if you wish to speak during a public hearing or the citizen comment period, there are sign-up sheets in the back of chambers, and please sign up. Mr. Allen, would you mind leading us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Item 3 is the adoption of the meeting agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Do I have a second?
I'll sit. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that passes 5-0. Mr. Short is joining us from remotely tonight, and I hope he feels better. Item 4 is matters from mayor. I do not have anything. Item 5 is matters from council members.
I just have one thing, Mayor. I talked with Mr. Hant over the last couple of months about Public Works and how that it's closed to the public. You can't walk in. There's nobody there all the time at the office to talk to people. I'm still getting complaints, and I'd like for us to try to set up some type of meeting where we can discuss that further, because not everybody has the availability of a cell phone or a computer to where they can go online to do what needs to be done. And I just think we need to give a better service to our citizens, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Anybody else? No? Okay. Item 6 is consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion passes 5-0. Item 7 is to present a proclamation naming the week of April 10th through 17th as National Animal Control Week in the city of Waynesboro. Mr. Lee, would you mind reading that, please?
Yes, ma'am. Whereas the National Animal Care and Control Association has designated the second week of April each year as National Animal Control Officer Appreciation Week, and whereas the Waynesboro Animal Control Officer is dedicated to helping pets and people in the Waynesboro community every day, and whereas various federal, state, and local government officials throughout the country take this time to recognize, thank, and commend all animal control officers for their dedicated service they provide to the citizens, public safety, and public service agencies across the nation. And whereas every day the Waynesboro Animal Control Officer puts herself in potentially dangerous situations by protecting people from dangerous animals and seeks justice in cases of abused, neglected, and abandoned animals by conducting humane investigations and protecting the welfare of helpless animals and pets from injury, disease, and starvation. And whereas the Waynesboro Animal Control Officer provides the essential functions of enforcing laws pertaining to animal care while educating the public on the proper care of our community's pets, and whereas the City of Waynesboro recognizes our Animal Control Officer for the many dedicated and long hours of service she performs in providing the highest and most efficient level of customer service to the residents of our community. And now, therefore, I, Atlanta Williams, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Waynesboro, do hereby proclaim April 10th through 17th, 2023 as National Animal Control Officer Appreciation Week in Waynesboro, and encourage all citizens to join us in expressing their sincere appreciation for the service and dedication of our Animal Control Officer. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Waynesboro to be affixed this, the 10th day of April, 2023. Atlanta Williams, Mayor, City of Waynesboro, Virginia.
And is Ms. Jennifer Anderson here to accept this? Would you like to say anything? Okay, well then we will just present this for you.
But thank you all so much.
I'm going to come down and present this to you. And thank you so much. Item 8 is to present a proclamation naming the April 10th through 17th as National Public Safety Communications Week in the city of Waynesboro. Mr. Wood will read that proclamation.
I will read it as written. Whereas, across the nation in times of intense personal crisis and community-wide disasters, the first access point for those seeking all types of emergency assistance and Homeland Security information is the 911 Center. And whereas the Waynesboro Department of Emergency Management Emergency Communications Center staff receive these calls and have emerged as the first and single point of contact for persons seeking immediate emergency assistance and are expected to multitask under stressful emergency conditions with compassion, accuracy, and professionalism throughout the year. And whereas this week, celebrated annually, honors the thousands of men and women who respond to emergency calls, dispatch emergency professionals and equipment, and render life-saving assistance to the citizens, residents, and visitors of Waynesboro and throughout the country. Now, therefore, I, Atlanta Williams, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Waynesboro, do hereby proclaim April 10th through 17th, 2023 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Waynesboro, and encourage all citizens to join us in expressing their sincere appreciation for the service and dedication of our members of the Waynesboro Department of Emergency Management Emergency Communications Center. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Waynesboro to be affixed this 10th day of April 2023. Signed, Lana Williams, Mayor, City of Waynesboro, Virginia.
And do I have Mr. Gary Kreitzer here this evening? If you would like to say a few words, you're more than welcome.
I can never say just a few words. On behalf of my staff, thank you very much for recognizing the incredible work that they do. They're truly behind the scenes unsung heroes. Thank you.
That was short and sweet, Mr. Kreiser.
That's rare for me.
Thank you, Mr. Lee and Mr. Wood, for reading those proclamations. Okay. Item 9 is to hold a public hearing and consider introducing an ordinance granting a conditional use for a hair salon and skin care center in a residential office district at 1305 13th Street, Unit C2, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 44-4-12-C2. Miss Leslie Tate.
Okay, so this evening, we're going to be reviewing a conditional use permit, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about the code requirements. Make sure it's doesn't want to advance. So conditional use permits allow for a case-by-case review of uses which may be, but are not always, compatible with neighboring uses. And in order to approve a conditional use permit, the City Council must find that the proposed use is consistent with good zoning practice and would have no more adverse effect on the health, safety, or comfort of persons living or working in the area, and would be no more detrimental economically or otherwise to property or improvements in the surrounding area than would any use generally permitted in the district. So the location of this property is addressed off 13th Street, and it is near the intersection of 13th Street and South Poplar Avenue. And the nature of the request is a request to allow for hair, nail, tanning, or professional care services in the residential office district. So the property is 1305 13th Street. It's Unit C2 of an existing office complex. And the applicant would like to open a hair salon and skin care center. The applicant has discussed the proposed use with the Office Buildings Property Owners Association and received support. This map shows the zoning in the area, so you can see the adjacent residential office zoning, and then kind of the nature of this area is a mixture between residences and then compatible businesses. So the zoning does allow for hair, nail, tanning, or other professional services can be permitted in the residential office district, but specifically by a conditional use permit. The comprehensive plan designates the area for medium-density residential, but per our zoning ordinance, medium-density residential supports not only the development of residential housing, but certain compatible non-residential uses. As I noted earlier, this neighborhood has traditionally been a mix of office and residential uses, and the proposed use is not inconsistent with those surrounding uses. So the area, like I said, is already a diverse mix of residential and office uses. The proposed use would fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. All necessary utilities are present in the existing building, and the location does have on-site parking. So the Planning Commission and staff do recommend approval of the conditional use permit with no conditions. So unless you have any questions, I believe the applicant is here as well.
Does anybody have any questions?
These are the buildings that used to be doctor's offices.
Yes,
and
there, I
dentist
think,
offices.
believe there was,
A
yeah,
lot of residential.
dermatologist's office, yes.
Okay. No other questions? Okay. I hereby open the public hearing. Mr. Ham, do we have anything on?
Madam Mayor, I don't have anyone signed up, but Ms. Tate indicated that the applicant is present. And
Okay.
They're not obligated to say anything, but if they'd like, I think we can accommodate that.
I'm here, I don't have anything to say right now, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Then I hereby close the public hearing. Is there a motion to introduce the ordinance granting the conditional use permit?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any discussion? Okay. This item will be considered at the April 24th meeting. Item 10 is to hold a public hearing and consider introducing an ordinance rezoning a portion of the property at 1930 Rosser Avenue, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map 511246, from planned unit development to highway business. Ms. Tate.
Okay, thank you. So the location of this property, I'm sure you're all very familiar with the old Ladd School property and where we've seen some significant commercial development recently along Rosser Avenue. The property, the full tax map is outlined in blue, and then the portion that you see in purple is the area that is currently zoned planned unit development, and the proposal would be to change that area to highway business to match the other portion of that parcel that's outlined in blue. And this request is just to permit additional commercial development, and it's really a response to the current market conditions and continued commercial interest now that that first layer right off of Rosser Avenue has been developed commercially. So a little bit of history. In 2014 was the closure of Ladd Elementary School, and then in 2015, the area was rezoned from RS7, which was traditional residential, to planned unit development and highway business. And then in 2016, the property was rezoned again to increase the amount of highway business zoned area. This is the 2016 concept, and you can see it includes commercial on the front portion of the parcel, and there was a proposal for 53 townhouses on the rear portion of the parcel. The proffers at that time included an enhanced vegetative buffer between those townhouses and the existing residential development on Brandon Circle. It included traffic improvements on Rosser Avenue, and it also maintained that all the private infrastructure would be maintained by the property owners or homeowners association. So the 2023 concept goes away from the residential consideration and have the entire parcel be developed as commercial. And the concept provided would leave the ability for 4 additional commercial pads. The proffer statements are being updated to remove some of those proffers, specifically the traffic improvements, which I'll go over in a minute, that have been completed and are no longer applicable because they've been finalized. So the 2023 revised proffers, as I noted before, the proffers currently require an enhanced landscape buffer, and the applicant does plan to maintain that now with the commercial use adjacent to the Brandon Circle townhouses. So what that enhanced buffer means is that it would measure at least 15 feet wide and include the following vegetation per 100 linear feet at a minimum. And so that would be 1 canopy tree, 3 evergreen trees, 2 understory trees, and 12 shrubs. And then in addition, you note that the 6-foot vinyl fence has already been placed at that property. Another proffer was that a property owners association would be established and responsible for the maintenance and repair of all those common areas and non-public infrastructure, so the roads and the parking. At the time of the Planning Commission public hearing, we were working with the applicant. They wanted to move away from that model, not having a property owners association, but having those maintenance be required through covenants. So we did note to the Planning Commission that we were working on language regarding that change. And so then we do have an updated proffer statement that maintains that the declaration of easements, covenants, conditions, and restrictions for Waynesboro Marketplace, which were dated June 3rd, 2022, and have been recorded, they're what would govern the maintenance and repair of those common areas and non-public infrastructure. So the same intent is there, it's just, the entity that is doing that maintenance. Another important proffer with the 2023 revised concept is related to interparcel connections. So the current plan does show one interparcel connection, and after some discussion with the applicant, some continued discussion with VDOT, the final proffers that have been submitted would actually provide the potential for 2 future connections to provide the opportunity for us to have connections to Windy Grove Drive. And so those 2 are shown here. So one would be a paved drive aisle stub that would be provided to align with the drive aisle on the parcel with the residence in and the outback. So that's noted as number 1 on the graphic. So that stub would be constructed to within 10 feet of the property line, and an easement would be platted and recorded to allow for future development by that adjoining party if they were interested. The other connection that you see as number 2 is what is currently on the approved plans. And there is some concern about the distance, how close that would be to the intersection if a connection were to be made there. So really the applicant, recognizing those concerns, but also wanting to leave the ability for the city to have, multiple options in case things were to redevelop on that corner. So they did propose a 40-foot easement provided to the adjacent property to accommodate for any kind of future construction or access that we may or may not need. Underground utilities and stormwater infrastructure will be reviewed and approved during the site plan stage. Adequate water and sewer capacity overall to allow for the additional development in this area is noted by staff. There was a traffic impact analysis that was completed in 2015. It assumed the entire site would be commercial with a big box club store like a Costco, a grocery store, fast food restaurants, and gas station with a convenience store. So fully built out in 2015, the TIA estimated 11,223 vehicular trips a day, and that analysis recommended a number of off-site roadway improvements on Rosser Avenue, and those improvements were proffered as part of the 2015 rezoning. And then in 2016, when another amendment came through, there was a comparative traffic analysis. The property was rezoned to shift some of the land from plan unit development to highway business, and in that concept plan, it assumed the entire site would be a mix of the 53 townhouses and commercial to include a grocery store, fast food restaurants, a hotel, and a general small shop space. So fully built out, that analysis estimated a lower number of vehicular trips at 10,678, so 544 less than the original TIA had shown. The 2015 traffic proffers were slightly revised with that revised site plan, and those improvements have been completed. So just kind of a reminder of what those improvements were, and I'm going to kind of walk through those. So one was a continuous right turn lane on Rosser Avenue from beginning of the Marketplace property to the light at Lucy Lane. The next was a left turn lane that serves the southbound approach of the Rosser Avenue and Lucy Lane intersection and closure of the median opening. The third was restriping of Lucy Lane eastbound approach to allow for through movements. There were traffic signal modifications to allow for new movements and those lane configurations. Full closure of the median on Rosser Avenue between the southbound left turn lane at Ludewitt and the northbound turn lane at Lucy Lane. And then finally, crosswalks were provided across Lucy Lane and Rosser Avenue, including pedestrian signals and handicap accessible curb ramps. So again, the applicant completed a comparative traffic analysis for this 2023 concept, and so that analysis includes the recognition of the current commercial tenants, so Take 5, Aspen Dental, Chipotle, Popeyes, and Sheetz, and they also factor in a high turnover restaurant, hotel, and 2 acres for an additional shopping center were all estimated as part of that analysis. And so fully built out, that estimates the number of vehicular trips a day at 8,116, so roughly 3,000 less than the original 2015 analysis, so no additional traffic improvements were recommended as part of this request, and VDOT did concur with this finding. The comprehensive plan future land use map does designate this area as institutional. That land use plan was created prior to the closure of Ladd Elementary School, so that's the reason. But highway business zoning is consistent with the commercial retail and the designation of the surrounding properties. So the Planning Commission recommended approval, and as I noted earlier, they had a proffer statement dated March 6th, and it was just that kind of discrepancy between whether it would be a property owners association controlling the maintenance or covenants. But they were aware of that change, and they recommended approval, so the proffers were slightly amended as I discussed, and they're dated April 6th and were included in your packets, and staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Tate? Okay. I hereby open the public hearing. Mr. Hamp, do we have anyone signed up?
So the only individual that signed up to speak was the applicant's representative, Mr. Seth Roderick.
Good evening. Yes, again, my name is Seth Roderick. I'm with Monteverde Engineering and Design Studio in Harrisonburg, representing the applicant, Michener Properties. Bill Michener himself, he's in North Carolina, so he was unable to attend tonight. I personally have a lot of history on this project. I was part of the original study and the rezonings that occurred back in 2015, 2016. And when we're looking at the project now and the request to go from residential to commercial, I'll stick to the high points. Ms. Tate did a great job of going into all the detail here, so I'll keep it a little higher. Generally, the positives are pretty self-evident, right? We're taking something that would be a tax, we don't want to call it necessarily a burden, but there's a tax implication from schools and EMS, et cetera, and we're replacing that with a tax growth revenue generator instead. So that's pretty simple. The concerns that we generally look at when we make that transition are largely twofold. There's a lot more, but they're largely twofold. We look at the surrounding land uses, making sure everything's compatible on that front, and then also traffic, because traffic is the one generator that's usually higher. So starting with the first part, the surrounding land uses, I think we saw, the comprehensive plan is due for an update. We understand that. So we look at the surrounders, a lot of commercial in the area. The original rezoning, when it went through, would have gone through fully as HB itself, except that at the time, different economic status and different conditions, quite frankly, on Rosser Avenue, there just was not enough demand for that second and really third row commercial. It was just tougher to get that far deeper into the property with fully commercial. So once they felt they did not have the tenants to be able to fill that spot, they went with the more suitable infill of high-density residential and townhouses in that sense. Now, the current property owner is a different developer. That was a different contract purchaser, of course, at that time. Different contract purchasers came in play in between them and Michener Properties. They were finding the same thing. They couldn't find ways to get enough commercial on the deeper end. Mr. Michener came in and felt that if it was built, it would come and would just leave the doors open. They found great tenants along the first row. It's been a good success. And now that those additional tenants are coming through. The real large linchpin you've seen on the concepts is it's a national restaurant. I'm not allowed to say the name at this point because things aren't quite finalized, but they are in the final steps of lease negotiation. The terms are all there. It's really just kind of getting the letters and I's dotted, T's crossed, et cetera. So that should be coming forward pretty soon. There's also a hotel that's in their due diligence phase and very excited to be there. So we're fingers are crossed that those guys are going to move forward and that everything's looking good. We're not seeing any slowdown at this point, so we're really expecting this to go through. As part of our, again, analysis of surrounding land uses, I did have the opportunity and took the opportunity to meet with the Brandon Gate HOA. I met with those guys way back in 2014 or 15 when that came around. Saw a couple familiar faces. They were very gracious in hosting me and helping me ask them questions and vice versa to see if there was any concerns that could be addressed. They were very interested in tenancies and when the construction's going to happen, but there was no real pushback from going residential to commercial, so that was positive. In essence, we're holding that minimum buffer, but we do feel that there's likely to be a much larger buffer if these tenants come through as we've got it shown. There will be much more land space in between those uses, which we think will be a help as well. Then shifting gears real quick just to the traffic, and Leslie went through all the numbers. I'm not going to repeat all those numbers individually, but the one key I wanted to represent there is that, again, when this project first went through, we went with very conservative and when we were hopeful that the entire property would be zoned commercial, and that was the basis for all of the improvements on Rosser Avenue. Now when we look at it about what was actually built versus what was hopeful at that time, it's a 28% reduction, even from what was originally studied. So even though we're going from residential now to commercial now, the original traffic study, which governed all of the improvements which have already been constructed, was 28% higher. So that was an easy mark to check there. And then again, the improvements or the changes that we made as far as the cross access for interparcel connectivity, we do believe, and working with staff, that we've got a better phrasing and terminology and direction for those interparcel connections as part of this request in front of you now, as opposed to what governs today, in the fact that the connection that we're guaranteeing to make is being pushed a little bit eastward. That's going to make things a little bit safer. I think for all parties, there's not a forced connection on that portion that's closer to the Window Grove Rosser Avenue intersection. That'll keep things a little safer. But we're keeping the door open at that other intersection, or closer to the intersection, not for the purpose of running a roadway necessarily straight out, but just in case somebody comes forward years down the road, wants to compile a lot of parcels there together, they have that ability. The easement's in place. They can work something creative like the city staff with VDOT influence and just have that opportunity if there's a good solution there that's found. So that door's being left open while we push a wide open door further down the street. So with that, I know I said a lot very quickly. If there's any questions, be happy to answer those now.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
I hereby close the public hearing. Is there a motion to introduce the ordinance rezoning a portion of 1930 Rosser Avenue to highway business?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Is there any discussion? No? This item will be considered at the April 24th meeting. Item 11 is to hold a public hearing on the lowered tax rate for the 2023 reassessment. Mr. Hamp.
Yes, ma'am. As you probably are aware, the City Assessor's Office has completed the 2023 general reassessment for the city. They are presently working through the various stages of appeal in that process. Folks may not be aware that the Commonwealth of Virginia, or the General Assembly, prescribes this process and the various components associated with it through the Code of Virginia. This evening, the council is required to hold a public hearing on the lowered tax rate, or what is referred to as the lower tax rate resulting from the 2023 general reassessment. The city's calculated lower tax rate is 74 cents per 100. In the advertising notice and other notices related to the general reassessment, folks may notice that the tax rate that was included was 90 cents. And if a locality has not already adopted a new tax rate subsequent to the reassessment, they're required by code to advertise the current tax rate. So that's why 90 appears in the ads. But again, 74 cents is the lowered tax rate resulting from the general reassessment, and that is the tax rate which would levy the same amount of real estate tax as the previous year or the year prior to the current new assessment. So with that introduction, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. we can move to the public hearing if there are no questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Hamp? No? No?
I would, ma'am, if I may add that as part of the process, there are 2 public hearings on the tax rate. This evening, the public hearing deals mainly with the general reassessment. As the council and staff move through a budget consideration and adoption process, the public will have a second opportunity to comment on a proposed new tax rate.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Hamp. All right. I hereby open the public hearing. Mr. Hamp, do we have anyone signed up?
Yes, ma'am, we do. Mr. Earl Lunsford.
And if you don't mind, please state your name and address.
Earl Lunsford. I moved to Waynesboro probably in 1976. Went working for the city at 79.
Could you provide your address, please?
Ma'am.
Could you please provide your address for the record?
1456 Harding Avenue, Waynesboro.
Thank you.
But like I say, I started working for the city in October 79. I bought my house in October 79. And since then, working for the city and everything, the old city council wanted to make Waynesboro a retirement community. But how can you have a retirement community if your assessments are going up and your tax rate's going up? To me, it's driving people out of Waynesboro instead of bringing them in. So, I mean, you know, if I ain't mistaken, Mike Hamp said y'all wanted to lower it down to 74 cents a hundred. Is that correct?
That's not correct. That's simply the calculation, if I may, the calculation on what would be the equalized or the lowered tax rate. The
Okay.
council is still working through a process by which they'll identify a new proposed tax rate.
Okay. So would that be anywhere close to what you were saying, 74 cents?
That would be speculation on my part.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I got to say.
Thank you. And I will remind speakers that you do have 4 minutes to speak, and we have a timer that will let you know when your time is up. You have about 30 seconds remaining once the light turns yellow. Do we have anyone else?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Alfred Swicegood.
And
Alfred Swicegood, 228 Stonewall Drive. I am here to ask, well, council and Madam Mayor, appreciate the opportunity to come before you to express my concerns and my challenges. But anyway, I'm asking that you will seriously, very seriously, consider the tax equalization figure, you know, and we'll still be paying a lot of tax. I've lived here since 1966, come to work here, but things have changed so much for me. I've been very happy, a very appreciative citizen for the Waynesboro, but it's gotten to the point that I wish I could move. I think it's time that I would, often think about moving out of Waynesboro, but it'd be so difficult for me to do that. And I've loved so much here. We've enjoyed so much, me and my family. And I would like to ask that in any way you could to postpone things that are more of a wants and frills that don't have to have, ones like the park that you've talked about developing up on the mountain. Well, that's the way out of the city. That's just one thing that could be considered that we don't spend money for. But I know we need to increase payment and a lot of things. I can appreciate that. But it has gotten a horrible burden for some of us older folks. And we are retired and very limited income, some of us. And so things have gotten quite a bit different than some time ago. So I just can't afford, the high taxes that have come upon us. And with people moving in, some more people moving in, there's going to be a lot more income too. And I think that should be looked at seriously. the people coming from up north, they can afford, you know. But us people that have lived here and older and on this very limited income are really having a struggle. And I hope there's others here that will attest to that too in their situation. So anyway, that's all I'll have to say, and thank you again for your attention. I hope you will seriously consider trying to do the equalization. I know that's still going to be paid a lot more with the reevaluation and so forth, but I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. William Yancey.
Good evening, William Yancey, 821 South Ellison Lane. Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, Mr. Hamp. I moved here in 2017 and never imagined in my life that the city of Waynesboro, I'd be paying more tax than Albemarle County. With 3 times the amount of citizenry and the amount of income brought in. From 2003 to 2016, the year before I bought my house, my assessment went from $127,000 to $148,000. From 2017 to this year, $122,000 up. I mean, there has to be a ceiling somewhere. And just because people are able to get investors to come to Waynesboro and spend $1 million on 2 acres and a cracker box to tear it down and put up high-density, multi-unit residential units, why should the people who've lived here, granted, I haven't lived here all my life, but I mean, there has to be a ceiling somewhere. You're going to wind up like Charlottesville and Albemarle now. You're not going to have enough people to pay for it. I mean, you just heard a man talk about they were going to do residential on Rosser Avenue behind Sheets, but we could possibly make more money. This city has dealt with affordable housing issues since I moved here 6 years ago. And you have somebody that would rather put commercial on the hope of getting a tenant to building the entry level to affordable housing everywhere in the country now, which is townhomes. But I just think you need to think about when the city of Waynesboro is paying more taxes per citizen than Albemarle County. Albemarle County's rate's 8.857. Ours is 90 cents. Now, granted, it's going to change, hopefully. But, I mean, still, to be paying more than Albemarle County is for 3 times the citizenry, we don't have the infrastructure that Albemarle County has. We don't have the services Albemarle County has. We don't have enough trash truck drivers to pick up our trash on time. So, I mean, just think about the people who do live here and the people who moved here. I moved here because of the tax debacles in Albemarle County and Fluvanna County. So, I mean, my question is we have to stop somewhere. We won't be able to afford anything. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Andrea Jackson.
Hello, Andrea Jackson, Ward A. I'm familiar with this issue. I've been trying. I spoke 2 years ago when y'all kept the rates at 90 cents, and since then I've worked on an affordable housing campaign and learned a great deal of just about taxes and affordable housing and just a lot of things that I just didn't know. And so, first of all, I'd like to say that this is a very complicated issue that the 5 of y'all have to deal with, and also the city manager and the like. But what I'd like to say is that there's several different things to go into it, and I hope that y'all don't just go and cut the property taxes and do a one-size-fits-all. I think when you do go into it, you look into it. I do agree, that for whatever reason, the assessments were particularly high because of the high demand and property, which is not in y'all's control. That's a national, state, and local issue. But I do understand the issues, and from some of the people who did speak at the last hearing. There are people who, and since my parents have retired, their income is not as much as what they used to be when they were working. So they live on a fixed income, and taxes is the issue. But I'd like to suggest that there are people who cannot afford it, and then there are just people who don't want to pay the extra money, and there's a difference. And for the people who are struggling, there are things, especially on the website, and that you can look for real estate property relief if you are 65 and over, or if you have a disability. And I think that that's something that needs to be more, broadcast, because that could alleviate a lot of the people who need relief, and instead of the people who do not want to pay the extra $100. And I do have, like what the gentleman was saying, that it is ridiculous. People don't want to pay taxes if they aren't getting the same amenities. And it just seems that, there are a lot of, I've lived here on and off my whole life for 40 plus years, and there have been, in the last 10 years, a lot of housing development. And it just seems like, well, there's more housing development, there should be more money from property taxes, but, the services, and it just seems every year I come to the board, the fundings, and Waynesboro still doesn't have the money to pay their bills. And I know how everybody else, I like paying my bills. You know what I'm saying? When my check come, I pay them, and then, whatever else I like to spend, nobody wants to, scruffle and, strive to, to make a difference. And it seems like the city has an issue, because every year the budget, we're working on skeleton and a bare minimum. And just like the first gentleman did say, he said, previous city councils wanted to make this a retirement, community. And it seems like maybe that's not the direction the city is going in now, and we need to figure out a way in which the vision of which the city is going in, and how to supply that, or how to fund it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Scott Mayers or Mays?
Hi, Scott Mayers. I'm at 1169 Sherwood Ave. Going along with the same kind of idea that the previous people had been talking about, tax rates have obviously been going up. I hear Mr. Hamp saying, yeah, we're targeting 74 cents per 100. But I think the public probably knows the games that can be played with this kind of two-pronged approach to taxing. You got the tax rate and you got the assessment. And if they hit them both, you get double taxed. So we'll see if you're serious about the people of Waynesboro and being able to afford housing here, because if you don't hit that 74 cents, we're going to see right through your words. We have a bed and breakfast here, and you're probably already aware of that. We're applying for a conditional use permit to host events there. We've been told our property is pretty unique, and that Waynesboro really needs an event site like we have. Given the new assessment, we are looking at about a $500 a month increase in our mortgage. That's more than half our revenue from our bed and breakfast alone. We drive a lot of customers. We always say, go down and visit our local businesses. We have a lot of customers that we drive down to our local businesses, and we hear reports back that they are, in fact, attending different businesses in Waynesboro. We try not to have them go out somewhere else. So it's more than just the lodging and the food tax that we're getting hit with, and the business equipment tax. The tax money that you guys are going to lose if we have to shut down, which we are seriously now considering, because our mortgage company says, hey, we noticed there's a tax increase. Now for 12 months, I have to pay an additional $500 a month. It doesn't matter what you do now. So my thing is, let's not do this backwards next time. Let's lower the tax rate first, and then you can talk about reassessing. and going upwards to meet that. Because right now, I'm locked in for another 12 months of $500 a month extra in my mortgage. So we're struggling right now with the decision to shut down, which basically means you lose that business income, as well as a real estate tax revenue. So my thought is, let's not do this way again. You can target 74 cents all you want, but let's lower the tax assessments first, and then if you need to bring it up, that's not going to be impactful to the people that are living here. And we can address this at that time. But mortgage companies don't care. They're going to see that increase in your tax, and that's locked in for 12 months now, unless I can come up with $4,000 to meet that deficiency in my escrow. So, you know, this hurts everybody. It's not just people that have good incomes and business incomes. It hurts everybody. You know, we don't all have excess money just sitting around waiting for a new tax rate to come up. So that's my word.
Thank you.
Ms. Sheila Lilly.
Hi, I'm Sheila Lilly. I live at 218 Skyland Avenue. I also am in agreement with the other people here. We'd like a tax-neutral rate. My husband and I own several rental properties, all in Waynesboro. And I know for the last few sessions, we've had people talking about affordable housing, affordable housing. Well, if our tax rates go up, then that means we have to raise our rents. And that's going to affect, you know, everybody that's a landlord are going to have to raise their rents. That's going to push all the rent rates up, and how are we going to have affordable housing? Also, my husband and I were talking about it, and we're thinking, well, vehicle assessments are going up too. How is that going to be affected? I know it hasn't been addressed yet, but if our tax rates on our houses are going up, are the tax rates on the vehicles going to go up as well? That's going to affect everybody. So we've got to be looking at the total picture of, you know, how much tax burden can we, as citizens of Waynesboro, bear before we all have to either, you know, move out to a cheaper locality, move into cheaper houses, sell our vehicles. It's, you know, it's going to be hard on a lot of people here. So I really ask for a tax neutral rate.
Thank you. Okay. All right. I hereby close the public hearing. There's no action required tonight, and I'd like to thank all the speakers for speaking out tonight. Item 12 is communication, correspondence, and calendar. Mr. Hamp.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Williams, members of council, actually, I have an item of some substance this evening. I'd like to provide an update on a customer service issue at the cemetery, and I'll do that with the help of Mr. Jones, Dwayne Jones, our Director of Parks and Recreation, who is also responsible for the care and maintenance of the cemetery operation. So each year, it's been our tradition to conduct in advance of the mowing season a cemetery-wide cleanup in order, one, to improve the general appearance of the cemetery, and two, to facilitate the care by way of mowing and trimming on the property. The city code provides general limits on how plots or burial locations can be memorialized, but the language in the code is very general in nature. Staff have, over the years, posted signs at the entrance to the cemetery to try and communicate to folks who have loved ones interred there expectations around timing and the manner in which headstones can be supplemented or further memorialized. What we have found is that, to be candid, we've sort of lost the ability to enforce the rules and set a standard of memorialization in the facility. And so this evening, we're going to talk to the council about a plan that we have to sort of regain our footing with respect to communication, and maintenance, and our interaction and relationship with our customers there. So Dwayne, if you want to take it from there, and then no action is required this evening, but I'll follow up at the end of Dwayne's presentation and give a request as to how we might move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hamp. Mayor, members of council, it's my pleasure to be here. I just wanted to call your attention to the code. It is Chapter 26 in our code. The section that deals with this particular issue is Section 26-15, obstructions and markers on plots. And basically, the first line covers the issue: no fences or other enclosures, landscaping, shrubs, or other obstructions around or any lot, plot, or section shall be permitted in the city's cemeteries. As Mr. Ham alluded, we have signs. We have 4 large signs on both entrances into Riverview Cemetery, alerting and that basically during the mowing season is where this is an issue. This was just taken a few weeks ago. Obviously, the picture on the left, there obviously were some decoration that were placed in December. You all live here, it's very windy, things blow down. This really creates an issue for the maintenance staff because these items are placed outside of those stones. They're wire, they're glass, lots of different items that is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to weed around. As you're all aware, we do no longer have the services of the inmate labor to weed eat, so we have contracted some of that service out to private contractors and also in-house. The other issue is the idea of sort of a ground cover effect. The one on the left is rock, which the mowers that we use are high-speed mowers that can potentially pick up a rock and throw that rock. The other issue is this use of solar lights, which are mostly metal or plastic. Again, some are encased in mulch, but most of them are not. And then finally, this really sort of sums it up. It's a little hard to read on the side, but that says World's Best Mom. And this was a coffee mug that is placed on this, and most likely collected water and froze over the winter. And then that fell, and then that is left there. What is challenging with this topic is that to some folks, that is a broken coffee mug. But to the family that placed that mug, it is very, very personal. And so all of these items carry some personal attachment, and it is not our intent to cause trouble with the families, but as a safety issue and a maintenance issue, to remove those items. Some folks think that we are just removing them because we don't like them, and it really is a safety issue. So that is, and so part of our transition plan is to do this over a couple of steps. And one is to promote the removal of non-compliant items for 30 days in social media, press releases, lawn signs to further call your attention to it as you visit your plot. But then at the end of that 30-day, a complete removal of all non-compliant items after the 30-day period. Again, it has grown, quite honestly, a little bit out of control. And so we feel that if we start and sort of clean the slate after a certain 30-day period, that we'll hopefully have it a little bit better under control. And then finally, mentioning what Mike mentions, a better delivery of services. So what we're trying to develop is a consistent set of rules for the cemetery. They really only see the treasurer's department, and at this point they get handed a permit that then goes to funeral homes, and that sort of starts the process. But they're not handed a set of rules. Now, I will tell you, as we've had a set of rules, folks that come at a time of loss, handing them a set of rules is really not beneficial because they don't read them. But what we'd like to do is be able to provide them with a nice package of all of the stuff that is related to the cemetery that's placed when they purchase that lot or purchase a recent burial area, in the hopes that at least we've done a better job of communicating. One of the other issues that we have, our system of selling those lots is not completely digitized. We basically get basic information, but we don't collect emails. So in order to inform these folks, it is very difficult, other than snail mail, to have any effective communication of any policy changes or anything with those folks that have purchased a site. So there are various challenges, but we do think that this sort of transition period gives us time. We will also work with Melissa and staff on developing a consistent set of rules that sort of tries to spell out as many things that are issues as possible, and do our best to communicate that to the public. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I think our preference would be that council to take some period of time to think about just the proposition generally, think about our challenge, and either confirm or correct our planned course of action. And then we have two choices regarding how council supports the effort if in fact you do. We think a preferable course of action to adopting the rules through a code amendment is simply for the council to empower the city manager to promulgate rules from time to time and enforce those rules. And that would be done in conjunction with the council, but I think it gives us the ability to adapt and be more agile as trends in cemetery site memorialization evolve. And alternatively, if you're not comfortable with that approach, we'll furnish a set of rules that we think fit the current time, and we can codify those, and then as we need to adopt or amend those rules going forward, we'll come back and council can participate in that process with us. So, or council, excuse me, you'll participate in either option. You will have, you'll have to approve the rules in the second option.
Okay.
So, again, no action required. I think in the coming days, I'll follow up and get some feedback, and then in a subsequent meeting, we'll be back with a plan to amend. And then if you have passionate and strong feelings about where we're going, let us know, because I think the staff is still working with the current rules to try to get the cemetery cleaned up for the warmer weather and for Mother's Day and occasions like that.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's all I have.
All right. Okay, so item 13 is the citizen comment period. I would like to remind all speakers to state your name and address for our records. You'll have 4 minutes to address council, and the light system serves as a timer. Once it turns yellow, you'll have 30 seconds remaining, and the red light indicates that your time is up. We ask that you direct all your comments to council, and please be respectful of those that are speaking. Mr. Hamp.
Ms. Andrea Jackson.
Andrea Jackson, Ward A. I just want to go in further detail and just say my opinion, because I didn't think I got that all the way across during the real estate tax. And I think that one of the gentlemen was like sort of kind of getting on Mr. Hamp about the 70 cents. He was saying that equalizes it. That's not what they're proposing. That's just the number that your tax wouldn't be more. You know what I'm saying? But of course, that's not what is in the budget, and that might not be what the rate is. And so I'd like to suggest the rate because, I'm an opinionated citizen. So I feel as though 85 cents is a good, number. I think some people may or may not disagree, but here's my, reasons why. One, like I said, I've been working on some of these issues, and when we was advocating at the General Assembly for tenants' rights, we was talking to Senator Hanger, and he sat down and talked with us for a minute, and reminisced about how Waynesboro was, and how he was saying in the 80s it was very progressive. And I was like, really? I mean, I was in elementary school then, so I don't remember. But in looking in the tax rates, it's interesting how they have changed over the years. And so the highest was in 1977 to 78, which was $1.05, and the lowest was in 2007 to 2010, which was 70 cents. And so throughout the different changes and variations, it comes to be that 85 cents was in 81 and 82, and also in 2003, 2004, and 87 cents was in 2017. And so I feel as though between that is from $1.05 is 20 cents less, and then it's 15 cents more than our lowest. And so if you're looking at this, you're being reasonable, you're saying, okay, you know what I'm saying, just on average your rates. And also, if you go 85, it's 5 cents less than the 90 that is already. So you're not paying as much as you would, but we're still getting more revenue. And why we need more revenue is because I was at the budget. We also want to have things in our city. We don't want to just be the city that has low taxes, but nothing for people to do. Or like the man says, we can't pay our employees or can't shovel our snow. Because the situation is that, you know, things cost money. The thing is that it says affordability is saying, can we afford the same services but at a lower rate? And that's a nonsensical statement, because we also got to understand is that inflation. It's that we got to factor that in. We things at the store cost more. We got to pay it, and that's just how it is. And also, referring to the lady about the rent, I can understand that, but you also understand is that rent is already going up. So the rent is already going to go up, regardless if the taxes go up or not. In 2021, rent on average went up 26%. And so renters don't get a reprieve. And so sometimes, you know, that just is how it is. This is how what's going on in the economy now. And I just want to say that 2 cents would fund 4 policemen, and that
So
has
much
been
for your time.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Item 14 is to hold a closed meeting. Is there a motion to go into closed meeting? Mr. Rowe?
Madam Mayor, I move this meeting to be recessed and that the City Council of Waynesboro immediately reconvene in the closed meeting for the following: consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice as authorized by Section 2.2-3711A8 of the Virginia Code. The subject matters of the meeting are the Sherry Smith estate and a matter termination of a city contract, and discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community, as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A5, namely, a business which has indicated an interest in relocating to the city or expanding its operations within the city.
Okay. Thank you for that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. And this requires a roll call vote. Ms. Bortle?
Mayor Williams?
Aye.
Mayor Woods?
Aye.
Councilman Allen?
Aye.
Councilman Short?
Aye.
Councilman Lee?
Aye.
Okay. We are in closed session. That council return to open session and certify the closed meeting.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt the following resolution. Whereas the City Council of Waynesboro has convened a closed meeting on this day pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this City Council that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of Waynesboro hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the City Council of Waynesboro.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Now second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Bortle, would you please call the roll?
Chair Williams?
Aye.
Vice Chair Wood?
Aye.
Councilman Allen? Councilman Short?
Aye.
Councilman Lee?
Aye.
Okay. We are back in session. And item 15, is there a motion to adjourn, Mr. Allen? Okay. I knew you would. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.